Hello, everyone. Hank Gross here for Mid-Hudson News, and this is a special podcast for this weekend. I am speaking with Bishop James Rollins, who is from Middletown. He's the former chapter president of the now defunct Middletown NAACP, and he's also an outspoken community activist, and that's why we have him in here today. And Jim, thanks for coming over.
Thank you for having me, Hank.
Sure. The latest controversy that's going on has to do with the Middletown School Board.
Absolutely.
Right. And we have a new election in May, and one person gets reelected for the umpteenth time, but then decides to step down. And now the controversy is who fills his slot. So could you tell us, please, your take on the whole situation?
Well, actually, it was a standard election where we had several people running for the two vacant slots. And as a result, as they were doing the reorganization meeting, one of the former Middletown School District Board members who had served for 12 years, Vincent Crescenzo, decided at the reorganization meeting that he was going to resign after having served a total of 12 years on the Middletown School Board. Well, what that does is immediately leaves another vacancy. And as a result, now the board has three options as to how they're going to fill that vacancy. Of course, they could have immediately decided to do another election to fill the vacancy of the one seat. They could leave that seat vacant and operate with 8 board members. Or the board has an option of interviewing people to backfill the vacant seat resulting from the resignation. And very good sources, as well as actual letters going out, have clearly indicated that the board chose the third option, which is that they would simply interview people and then place someone in the seat. I've got a real problem with that because while it is not illegal for them to take the course of action that they have, it is clearly unethical. And the reason I say it's unethical is because, quite frankly, it disenfranchises the voters. I called 3 of the board members to let them know how not only displeased I am, but how I fervently object to their course of backfilling the position, Hank.
Well, and let's tell the audience that Mr. Gomez had been a school board member for years and lost by a handful of votes, and he would be the next one in line as the next top vote getter to get that newly vacant slot. Is that correct?
That is correct. However, what they've done is they've decided to interview several people. They distributed a letter of interest for parties who'd like to serve on the school board. And my problem with that is that, again, it's not illegal, but it is clearly unethical. What I called several board members to, I called them literally to say, why wouldn't you simply take one of the 2 first options? And I was told that they did not think they wanted to do another election because that would be too costly. And the inference was that they were concerned about taxpayer dollars and the logistics involved in having another election. I accepted that. So then the second option certainly would have been to leave the seat vacant. What I said to them was that legislatively we've got a problem here, because the way I see it, there should only be 2 options. The first would be to have an election. The second should be to take the next highest vote getter, which is not even included. The third option of the board unilaterally selecting someone is totally subjective and completely disenfranchises the voters of this community.
And let me just say also that if you left the seat vacant until next May's election, you'd be one person short, and the public in the school district would not be 100% served by a full board.
Absolutely. And so just as they chose to not have the election, they certainly could have simply made the decision, since it was a board decision, that we're going to look at what the voters said as they exercised this long-standing democratic process, and simply put in the next highest vote getter, who has been a former board member, by the way.
Right.
And rather than do that, they are interviewing people who didn't have the courage nor the desire to put their name on the ballot, to knock on the doors and listen to the community about the education and the budget that would actually educate their children. So you're going to have someone who's been sitting at home all this time, okay, to just come back and now join the board, while you have the next highest vote getter, who literally knocked on hundreds of doors, got over 400 votes, and you're not even going to put him in. It is a travesty if they take this process, interview other people, and even though they've interviewed Mr. Gomez, to not put him in the seat.
A majority of the new board will have to be the ones to select the replacement.
Absolutely.
Right? So now the former chairwoman, president of the board, is no longer president, and Bishop John Williams was elected president.
Yes, again. He was put back into the seat, and the vice president remains Mr. Freddie Williams, who was also the vice president under the former board president, Rose Tobiasen, just last year.
So now I called Bishop Williams. His phone said that the messages were filled up. I sent him a text message wanting to get his take on the whole situation. No response. So I don't know if he doesn't look at his text messages or is just wanting to avoid answering questions.
I would hope that they all recognize the import of this issue, because I can tell you, as a community activist, I'm going to be standing at the podium not only at the next meeting, but I'm going to remind them of this travesty. When I think about this, Hank, we are in a country right now where the highest court in the land has taken a majority to gut the Voting Rights Act, which so many people fought, bled, and died to secure, so that minorities and black people in this country would actually have a voice in this democratic government. And so the reason I'm leaning the way that I am, because that same court has just, for all intents and purposes, abolished affirmative action. And so to see that the makeup of this board, which I am proud of, by the way, that now has 4 black men on the board, which is truly representative of the demographics of the school district, but for them to not consider the importance of recognizing the power of the vote. I say it every time I rise to my feet, every time I get an opportunity, that voting is the currency of democracy. And while this is not illegal, I believe immoral as well as unethical, in my opinion, falls in line with the fact that at one point slavery was legal, but it was immoral and unethical. Major landmark cases like Separate but Equal, Plessy versus Ferguson, were legal, but they were also clearly unethical and immoral. And for them not to take advantage of this opportunity and to look at a Kevin Gomez, who, by the way, is Hispanic, and to not simply interview him if that's the route you're going to go, but clearly demonstrate that he would be a shoo-in for the position, not subjectively because of a decision of a majority of the board, but because he represents, with all of the 400 plus votes that he received, He represents a selection and an honoring of the voice of the people.
The majority of the population of the city school district is black and brown.
Hank, this school district has approximately 7,000 students. My last check at the student census. 7,000 students in the Middletown School District. Okay? 90% of those students are black or brown. There is literally 700 non-black students or non-minority students in the Middletown School District. So when you talk about representation, again, where I come down on it, this really reeks at its very core because they have an opportunity to display a level of integrity that would actually say, since legislatively the process is flawed, we're going to lead with integrity and give the next highest vote getter the opportunity to fill the seat that was vacated as a result of a resignation. I would be making the argument no matter who the next highest vote getter is, because it maintains a level of integrity and highlights the importance of recognizing the voice of the people when they take their time and go to the polls every year to vote for those who will be trustees on our local school board.
The one thing I've noticed is that over time, the number of people who vote in school board elections is typically low.
Yes, it is.
And in Middletown, it's lower than in other communities, other cities, because as you recall, many years ago, city school districts, you could not vote on budgets. It was just voting on the school board members.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And then when you look at Middletown with a 90% population of black and brown, I think it's fair to say that half of the board being black isn't enough.
Absolutely not. It does not represent the actual demographics of the school district. I have been fighting, even as a former president of the Middletown NAACP, the lack of having minority teachers. Now, I will give them credit for a dramatic and material increase in the number of minorities in the administrative ranks of our school district. I applaud them for that. Okay, but not in the ranks of teachers. We still have a dramatic disparity in the number of teachers. I will tell you a heartbreaking brief story. There's a teacher at my granddaughter's school. My grandchildren go to the Middletown schools, so I have a vested interest. And one of the teachers teaches at the middle school where my granddaughter attends, and she was in 6th grade last year. And I remember having a conversation with him in a parent-teacher conference that I attended. And he said, sadly, Mr. Rollins, Bishop Rollins, I'm probably the last male black teacher that your granddaughter will have until she graduates 12th grade. And I know that to be the case because nationally we have an epidemic problem. Only 1% of all of the teachers in America are black males. And that's for another podcast. We'll talk about that I certainly would like to address. You know, when you start looking at the busting of the teachers' unions and the things that are being done politically to undermine the salary structure as they push toward private schools and other types of education, and not paying the people who actually educate all of our millionaires, billionaires, executives, engineers, etc. They're not being properly paid. So, but that's for another podcast.
We discussed very briefly before that you were president of the NAACP in Middletown.
Yes.
But the organization folded. You need at least 100 members to have a chapter. There's a big one in Newburgh, Highland Falls.
Yes.
There's one in Dutchess called the Northern Dutchess, but I believe that covers most of the county. I think there's also a Beacon.
Yes, there's definitely a Dutchess, but I had worked for years. I was part of reorganizing it here in Middletown when I believe back in the early 2000s. And because the membership declined and we could not maintain 100 members, ultimately the chapter folded. There is a yeoman's effort being initiated now by some very, very conscientious people who want to revitalize the chapter. And I have agreed to more or less act as a consultant and ultimately to just simply be a member for them to bring back the Middletown chapter of the NAACP. And I'm going to do everything I can to help them do that, because it's issues, there are many issues that occur in our communities that certainly need the attention of a storied organization like the NAACP. I don't have to tell you about the different things going on in our country as it pertains to minorities everywhere. So we are certainly looking forward to that, and I'd like to come back and actually spend time on a podcast just talking about the revitalization of the NAACP and its purpose as well as its mission, and perhaps I can bring with me the principals who are actually working to revitalize the chapter.
Because now more than ever, with what's going on in the country, you need an organization to speak out.
Yes, you do.
And rally for certain causes. And it's unfortunate, as you point out, the city of Middletown has such a large black and brown population, and there's no representation.
No, there isn't.
And then you look at Newburgh, which the biggest population in Newburgh now is Latino.
Yes, it is.
Right? Followed by black.
Yes.
And they've got a chapter in Newburgh, Highland Falls, very, very active.
Yes.
The Northern Duchess one had a lovely lady as president. She passed away a year or so ago. But that's still going strong. So, yes, I agree we should bring in the movers and shakers who want to revive it.
Let's do that at our next podcast.
Okay.
And, again, Hank, we in this community applaud you for the valiant work that you've done for decades now, not only to ensure that we get good and up-to-the-minute news, literally from our local areas, but also you were a member of our NAACP and continue to champion the efforts of every voice, especially those who are concerned about social justice and all that comes along with it. So kudos to Mid-Hudson News.
Thank you very much. And Bishop Rollins, thank you, and we'll have you back.
Yes, sir. Look forward to it.